Hello and welcome to the Metapod, the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. I should have had my guest host today do the intro, try to do the tongue twister that I like doing. FlowTKast, Stephen Maxlow. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good, man. I just got back from Indianapolis Regionals. Oh, I was supposed to go, oh, hello.
Oh, yeah.
It.
Because that's what Sean does in all of his videos.
Yeah, I was going to do that, and then I forgot. But then I remembered. But I just got back from Indianapolis Regionals. The drive back was hectic. My car exploded.
I saw that on Twitter, actually.
Yeah. But then my co-host on my spot, Scott Steckley, saved my life. So we made it back, and he fixed my car. What a guy. Oh, we're good. A little tired, but we're all right.
So for anyone who does not know, whether that's on YouTube, our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple, you may be hearing a different voice other than Sean. Sean is in the wide, gigantic state of Texas, and because I'm actually also leaving, so Sean is coming back from Texas today at the time of this recording, and I am leaving for Texas tomorrow when this episode releases. So we decided to call an audible today, bring on our good friend. Those of you that know the lore, longtime listeners will know of Maxlow. He's been on the pod. We've been on his pod. We're pod buddies in the Pokemon trading card game. We've had about the same amount of episodes, I think.
I think y'all are one ahead of me, but
yeah, I think
right.
We're both in the 90s. So been going pretty much the same amount of time, pandemic startups, as they say. But we've got a lot to talk about today because there were not only just Indianapolis Regionals that Maxlow attended over here and can give testaments and talk about the different decks, but there was also a regional championship in Brazil and also a special event that happened over in Spain. But, Maxlow, we do this every single time. Every single time we talk about a lovely review that was left on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, comments, things like that. So starting it off with the 5-star review, we are at 98 ratings, by the way, on Apple. So we're coming up on 100 episodes here on the podcast, almost 100 ratings on Apple. Would love to see if we could get 100 ratings before we get to 100 episodes. But this one is coming from Shadow721. Fun to listen to, 5-star review. Lovely podcast. Just started listening, and I'm on hopscotching all the way along the back catalog of episodes, enjoying them all. I may not play the game so much, but I did get back into collecting. Thank you, COVID. And I enjoy listening to y'all's discussion of all aspects of the Pokemon trading card game. Current events, NFTs, Logan Paul shenanigans, etc. And you both clearly have a great report and a lot of knowledge. Awesome job. Thank you so much. And Maxwell, obviously, the great report as well, and bringing on the excellent knowledge. One of the guests that we've been able to showcase the lovely skills. But how much Maxlow collecting do you do personally, if you don't mind me asking?
I do a little bit. I do follow it a lot. Actually, it's funny because I just started this thing. I started playing 6 years ago. Not a big deal. And but
longer than I've been playing.
I've been collecting like a deck. One of my favorite decks from each year I've been playing. So like I've just bought all of Evil Tall Garb and like Zoro Guardy, if you guys were playing and girls were playing in the old days, you know what I'm talking about. If not, they're just old decks that I really like. So I do a little bit.
There is a collector's item that I know I'm interested in. I don't know if I'll be able to get this, but Maxlow, the Pokemon Sword and Shield Precious Collector Box. This is literally for everybody. This is a phenomenal thing that has just been announced. So this is off of PokeGuardian.com. The Precious Collector's Box has been revealed. Now, if you don't remember, there was a Sun and Moon type product as well that was similar to this. It was very exclusive. It came out in Japan, and it came with a lot of items. But Maxlow, this box is incredible in my opinion. There are plenty of things here if you are seeing on the screen in the images. First, we're going to talk about this promo card that you get. This absolutely beautifully illustrated promo by Uribe, and it is just incredible. Many illustrations, the Urshifu, the Calyrex, Zoroark, Inteleon, Crobat, and Pikachu on this. And out of 10, Maxlow, 10 being incredibly awesome, best card ever, what would you rate this art?
I'd give it a solid either 9 or 10 for two reasons. One, I thought this was cool. I don't know who pointed it out on Twitter, but they said that this card defines the Sword and Shield meta. You have the Crobat that represents Crobat V, Zacian for Zacian V, the Inteleons because the Inteleon engine, Urshifu, Shadow Rider, Calyrex, and then I guess Hisui and Zoroark's about to take over when it comes out in a few months. So, and that was my second reason because it has Hisui and Zoroark, which is one of, if not my most favorite Pokemon that to come out in the last year. So this card's gorgeous, and it's a really good callback to the last few years of Sword and Shield Pokemon TCG, I think.
I 100% agree with that. And, you know, we've been hyped up on like character rares, especially different things like that, just beautiful alternate illustrations. And this, in my opinion, takes the cake. Like you said, you know, from that tweet, the summary of this is the entire Sword and Shield era, not only from just an artistic perspective as well. There's a lot of influence in terms of the sets as well. We talked about it on the competitive side just now, but even on the collector's side, you know, you have the Battle Styles era with the Urshifu, you have the Chilling Reign era with the Calyrex, Crobat, Zacian, part of the Sword and Shield base set area, especially, you know, Crobat being part of the toolkit as well. And then like Inteleon, you know, not only do you have Shady Dealings, which we've talked about has been a huge influence competitively and was also promos of like pre-releases and, you know, part of the base set and has been included in many different competitive products that have been released as well, but also the VMAX on top of that. Just incredible stuff, you know, just tying everything together in this product. But don't worry, you're going to get a ton of other stuff alongside this, including this beautiful binder that also has a bunch of the Sword and Shield era influence. If you're looking at this image now, this has kind of a print. I don't know what would you call this? Embed? Like, what's this like pattern?
I think it's like embedded, but that is unreal.
There is
I'm not even gonna lie.
Yeah. Maxlow is just like flabbergasted looking at this image. I highly encourage, look at the YouTube video, look at the Spotify video if you can. There are a bunch of different card illustrations. So think of the embedded like kind of prints being the actual cards. You know, you have the Marnie full art, you have the Galarian Moltres on here, you have Mew VMAX, Scoop Up Net, even heavily influenced trainer cards of the competitive format are just imprinted on this intense, awesome, beautiful binder. You know, there's Lumineon in here, Zamazenta, Zacian, Charizard VMAX right on the front. There's Umbreon VMAX down there, Crobat. This is an incredible binder. This is probably one of the coolest binders that I have seen printed, and I highly encourage, if you can get this, which we'll talk about here shortly, how you can get this. It's just absolutely incredible. It also is 3x3 pages as well, and the pages are also side inserts. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's two different types of ways that you insert your cards into page binders. Some of them kind of the old-fashioned style, I will call it, or how I remember, you know, being a kid with sports cards and Pokemon cards. You would always insert the card top down, but in these kind of newer generations, or how I've started to notice it within the last couple years, there is side inserts from left to right, and that's how this binder does it, which is honestly my preferred way. I much prefer doing it from the side. So excellent opportunity. But I'm not even going to let you talk about how hype this is, because we still got a ton of stuff to go that's coming up alongside this. You do get a deck box as well. It looks like it probably holds more than one deck if you're looking at this right now. It is kind of a, I would assume it's like a leather print almost in terms of the style. It's a flap that goes over. In the box, it's also got that same imprint of the different card arts. You know, you see Luminion, Zacian, Zamazenta, Mew VMAX, etc. On this, you have different deck box dividers. So if you've ever bought like a deck box, you know, or you've even opened an ETB, an Elite Trainer box, that's exactly what those is, those dividers that you get to, whether you divide your deck by trainers, you know, Pokemon, energies, or you just say, hey, here's one deck, here's another deck, or, you know, your favorite artists, if you're organizing cards in this way, that is what that is. You also, which I also think is one of the coolest things, you get this card stand as well. So this is a stand that comes in it where you can showcase, you know, your favorite card. This specifically has on their Precious collection. So it's a stand that really showcases that Precious collection. It has a an outline, a type of thing around where the card is inserted that shows, again, the different prints of the different cards on there. So Mew VMAX, Zamazenta, Luminion, etc., etc. And whether you put your new Pikachu promo to encapsulate your Sword and Shield experience, or whatever your treasured card is, you would insert it in this frame, keep it protected, keep it safe, and also have just an incredibly sweet display on it. And also in that display, you can put a little, you know, card protector case. I think it's like a plastic or glass-esque type case that can help keep your card protected, sturdy, etc. And it's got a little Pokeball on the back that says Pokemon Card Game. And how do you feel about this, Maxlow? You've just been staring in awe. I know I've been talking away, but what do you think?
I think it's gorgeous. I don't like the lettering too much. Like, I'm a minimal guy, so like where they put the Precious collector box on that, it was like, you could have probably went without that. And then what is it? Oh, the case, the frame case. There's only 2 Pokemon that need to go in there. That's Shiny Impidimp and the Metapod from base set. So yeah.
There we go.
Take that information with what you will.
If only I could. Well, I would never do this, but Sean for Christmas got me a PSA first edition Metapod, and maybe one day I'll crack it open and put it in. I would never crack it open. No, Sean's about to have a heart attack, but you got the
Japanese PSA 10 Impidimp.
It's just such a good card. Like Shining Fates and VMAX Climax and stuff were such good sets. But if you want this is a little bit of the interesting part. It is 17,600 yen, which I honestly actually do not know what that is. It's not euros. I wanted to say yen. That was going to be $18,000, but that is 134.5-ish USD dollars for all of my for all of our US audience, and I don't know what it is in euros. That is going to have to be something that you'll look up. But especially with this is going to be made to order. That's the biggest thing. So a lot of people, when they look at this, they're worried that, oh my gosh, like it's going to be scalped all the heck. It's going to be resold for thousands of dollars, just like the Sun and Moon era one. But don't worry. Just take your sweet time to pre-order. You can pre-order this and it will get to you on that pre-order. Now, in terms of the pre-order, this is going to be the interesting part, because this is Pokemon Center Online Japan. As we've talked about with these products, in the past, you have to pre-order it and ship it to a Japanese address. And so for me and Maxlow, for instance, we can't just have it sent to our house, right? We can't just go on the Pokemon Center online and just be like, oh, send it to P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney, you know? And that is not how the Pokemon Company online in Japan works. So you're going to have to use a third-party service in order to get it sent to you, which is very common in terms of, you know, people in the United States or countries outside of Japan that do collect. If you do want a recommendation of who to go to, I would definitely go to my buddy OKJ Love. He is a wonderful member that I know and a friend I would consider. He lives in Australia. He covers Pokemon Japanese cards. I'm pretty sure he has plenty of YouTube videos and different ways of telling people how to make orders from the Pokemon Center online in Japan. If you do not have a Japanese address, you're just like Maxlow and I outside of the States. But I mean, I got a full-time job now, Maxlow. I don't make millions of dollars, but I do make enough money to survive. And I'm gonna be honest, like, this is really tempting. Like, even if I would probably pay upwards of $200 for this, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous piece of it's a gorgeous thing to collect for sure. And it who knows? Keep it sealed. Put it next to your gold coin card from Burger King and call it good.
You actually can't see it, but I do have I have the Jigglypuff. I think the Burger King coin. It's like somewhere up there. But I also have, you know, my ancient Mew that I got, you know, way back in the day and saved. But anyways, enough with the shenanigans. We had 3 tournaments that went on over the weekend. 3 major tournaments, if that, in the Play Pokemon series. The one that Maxlow went to, the one that I wanted to go to, you know, I spent 6 years in the city, and unfortunately with work, well, unfortunately with work, I could not attend the Indianapolis Regional. There were over 1,000 masters that competed in this event. Maxlow, just before we get into, you know, like top 8 and things like that, kind of give a testament, because you were actually at the event. You know, you were, I would say, the first on the pod since it started back up that's been, you know, to a regional style event, a gigantic event. So kind of give a testimony, if you will, to how the event was.
The event was incredible. One of the first things you notice, like people who played in tournaments before the pandemic, was the spacing of the tables. So like before, you would just have lines and lines, and it would just, everybody'd be crammed up into one. The TOs in round 3 events managed to fit all those people who were playing in this tournament, space it out to 2 games a table, and it felt so much. My anxiety was less from that.
I will say, like, I saw pictures and stuff of it, and I saw testaments from like Will Post, and Will Post on Twitter was talking about how, like, it was so easy for judges to like move around, and spectators and competitors alike just like do stuff, and everybody was like, you know what, let's keep it this way, like, let's just do this forever. But continue on, sorry.
Yeah, I think we should too, no matter what. But I mean, the event was ran very smooth. One of the things I did want to talk about, I don't know how much we're going to get into the whole meta of the thing, was the fact that Urshifu VMAX was like not really a thing. It felt like I didn't see any. Well, I saw 1 out of 9 rounds, which was insane. But that's another conversation for later on. But just the event was incredible, and seeing all the old and new faces from everywhere. I think it was almost the biggest regionals of all time.
I think if it wasn't, it was pretty doggone close.
Yeah, it was close. There was only one other time. It was Collinsville back in 2019 that hit over 1,000 players, that a regional did.
I think that was the last regional before the pandemic.
No.
Oh, no.
Collinsville, the standard Collinsville, which was in 2019, like early 2019.
Oh, yes. Because 2020 was the one where everyone, where the world shut down. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was expanded. So expanded never gets standard numbers ever. So, but it was well ran, a lot of fun. You know, it was really good to see everyone again and new people that I've and Jake has probably met online during the pandemic era. So it was really awesome to show face for sure. That's what my 2 cents.
I wish I could have been there. I'll try my best to be at NAIC over, that's Columbus, right? They're doing it in Columbus again?
Unfortunately, but yeah.
I went as a spectator in 2019, and I thought it was really, really cool. I had a lot of fun. But anyways,
I got no beef with it at Columbus. I got to stay on brand. All right, let's go Michigan.
All right. Well, we need to talk about the different standings. We need to talk about the decks that excelled. So shout out to Ian Robb, a Pokemon player that we've talked about several times already in this young comeback in the season. He ended up winning the event with Arceus V-Star, Inteleon, and a bunch of different counter birds. This is a list that he's been playing for a little bit and constantly refining. So if you do not, I'm actually not going to show the whole thing because then my fat head would be covering it up. But here is the list if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify. One of the biggest interesting things to note about this Arceus Bird Box Inteleon list that is different than prior is the inclusion of Medicham V. So, Maxlow, you're looking at this list. You're a competitive player. Talk about the different things that maybe surprise you of this list. Talk about maybe the cool factors and the cool different combos that we're able to play in this list, etc., etc.
So first and foremost, this list is sick. The one that Ian Robb took to SLC before this rendition of it, I was a huge fan of just because of all the different counter mechanisms and stuff like that. But the inclusion of Medicham V was something that I was thinking about before the tournament, or I guess when it was like introduced as a thing in Liverpool Regionals, if I'm correct. Wondering if you could hit the proper numbers for Arceus, because Arceus can do 180 without a choice belt and a double turbo energy, 200 if you have a completely set up Arceus with all the energy on it without a choice belt. So I was wondering if those numbers worked, and apparently with the inclusion of also quick shooting Inteleon, being able to use the yoga loop to take an extra turn to even further set up your board state it's just a fantastic inclusion. But I think the real MVP of this deck, if I were to ask Ian Robb right now, and if I were to bet, is the 2 energy search and 2 energy switch. Because being able to accelerate with Galarian Moltres, with that Dire Flame Wings ability that lets you bring it back from accelerate a dark energy onto Galarian Moltres from the discard pile and only being able to use it once per turn, using something like Energy Switch to manipulate your attackers in any way you want, that's a really good inclusion to the deck for sure, especially because he does play the one Galarian Zapdos and the one Galarian, or not Galarian, it's just a regular Hoopa.
I will say,
Strike Hoopa.
One thing that if you did get to watch the Indianapolis stream, the Bilbao stream, the Joinville stream, is that Arceus decks really struggle when they don't get that turn 1 energy. Regardless if they're going first or second, the big game plan, the big thing that you want to do on your first turn is to get an energy down, whether that is a basic energy or a special energy. And so, like Maxlow was talking about, especially in the beginning of the game, having those energy searches and energy switches are huge factors in terms of getting that off, because you want your deck to be as consistent as possible, to stick to the game plan that you provide. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, you are trying to do that with the Arceus, getting that first turn attachment. So that only helps you so much more, I will say, in this. And the Medicham, I totally agree. You know, being able, especially with the Chilling Rain, quick shooting Inteleon, you know, we talked about in previous weeks on this podcast how it's really fallen off, and, you know, people recognizing the I don't want to say superiorness of Shady Dealings, but Shady Dealings is really freaking good. You know, I think everybody can agree with that and how important it is to provide that consistency. But excellent list piloting this. I will say, though, my favorite list, Maxlow, to come from this event.
One thing I want to mention real quick is Ian Robb tweeted under it. He said that Medicham V was added as a counter to Dunsparce, but he found other uses. And then he said Energy Switch was the best card in the deck. So I was right on the money. Let's go.
Maxlow, you know, there's a reason why I asked him to be on this pod for this week. You know, very knowledgeable, very good at what he does and analyzing. Makes content on YouTube and Twitch of the Pokemon trading card game. So go follow. Go follow.
And subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Also, we got to talk about Bradders. If you follow me personally on Twitter, you know, my personal Twitter account, you know I love the freaking bees. You know that bee drill in Bradner's Arceus Inteleon list was awesome, in my opinion. An excellent job using Single Strike Mustard, a supporter that we've talked about in the past, especially I think like a couple weeks ago. This was huge, you know, using Mustard to get that Beedrill out and to use the single grass attachment to knock out one-hit KO Muse, Arceus, especially because Arceus are using double turbos. Anything that has special energy, which is huge in this format at this point. Just knocking it out, but also utilizing Arceus, Dunsparce even, you know, there's a Zigzagoon in there as well to really hit the money. And, you know, all of the boys in this, you know, this is an American group that Isaiah Bradner is part of, with Rahul, Sam Chen, who did excellent in this tournament. You're really just piloting this list very well. So talk to me a little bit about this list, Maxlow.
This is another list that I was super impressed to see do well. I heard Isaiah and all of them at the tournament talk about it. And my first thought was, well, if there's Mew players playing 2 Psychic Energies, they're going to win this tournament. But it's not just persisting that knocks out with knocks out your opponent's Pokemon with the special energy on it. That second attack is nasty too, because everybody was playing counters to Urshifu. The Galarian Hoop, Galarian. The Hoopa, Galarian Moltres, the V and the baby one, they're all weak to grass. So doing 110 is 220. Perfect math on taking a knockout on those things too with a single prizer. So you're always favoring in the prize trade against dark counters and stuff like that. You're a little short on Umbreons, but there wasn't a lot of Umbreons, so that didn't really matter.
Hasn't been a lot of Umbreons in the lead. No, I mean, Sander did, but that's a whole different kind of Umbreon, I would say, than what most people anticipate.
For sure. So, like, I think the Beedrill's utility in this last tournament was unreal. It was a very strong card for the event, especially, as I was saying earlier, the Urshifu counts were very small. But Isaiah had all the proper text for that, the Manaphy, the Dunsparce, and then he played the Ordinary Rod to recycle those back if they do get the knockout on those things. So his Arceuses were protected. He had a solid backup single prize attacker, and then all the consistency in the world. And yeah, I can't wait to get my greasy hands on this one too.
If it wasn't for Arceus V-Star being kind of expensive, I would say I would be buying this deck up and playing it to all heck until, well, I don't know how it's going to fare when Astral Radiance comes out, but one can only hope. But one thing I really like in this list is the inclusion of Air Balloon. You know, Air Balloon, really good for the different pivots in the Pokemon trading card game. It's very good a lot of times to have a pivot type Pokemon, whether that's a Pokemon that has free retreat to where you can constantly bring back, or using attachments or manual retreats or different switching options to be able to switch between different Pokemon. And this worked out really well a lot of times for Bradner because, well, Beedrill, when you get Beedrill out with Single Strike Mustard, whether you're using the Sting attack to knock out Pokemon with special energies or Jet Spear, as well as Maxlow was talking about how important that move was during Bradner's run against different dark type Pokemon and things like that. That Pokemon, Beedrill, gets put on the bench, and so you have to get into it some way. And with the attachments, a lot of times for Arceus, you don't want to discard the double turbo. You don't want to discard, 2 basic energies or the capture energy that is attached to it. And so having that air balloon, especially because you can find it very easily with Shady Dealings, that ability, once again, that we just keep talking about, provides consistency, allowed Bradner to, in situations, retreat right into the Beedrill and not have to worry about losing energies in certain aspects, which I thought was really, really cool. It's not something that we've seen a ton of, in my opinion, and it's worked out really well. Can also be used to really pivot any bad starter like Dunsparce or Zigzagoon. So, I mean, there's a lot of options and a lot of paths in this deck, but only one research, I will say. I'm always scared when decks only have one research.
I think it's fine just because Rapid Strike Mustard draws cards too. Because like most Arceus decks, they either run 2 Marnie and 2 research, and then maybe an Avery to draw cards. So it's always usually really low on draw supporters anyway. So actually it's a higher count than normal.
I will say, listening to Isaiah Bradner talk in like post-match interviews, which, by the way, I don't know if Bradner listens to this podcast. We've had him on the podcast as a guest before, but dude, you should really think about casting at Pokemon events, because he's a very good talker in a microphone.
Or start your own pod, my man.
Yeah, I mean, you could really do that as well. He's a very personable person. But what he was saying as well in terms of in this list is, you would think sometimes that Single Strike Mustard is a hard combo to get off, but a lot of people actually mentioned this as well, the different people they were using Mustard combos, because there were a couple different Beedrill lists. I believe Ryan Sablehouse also played Arceus Beedrill in this like little group that was I think he was top 15 or something close to that. He did very, very well. 20th overall. That's what it was. Not top 15, but very, very close. One thing that they would say is there were many times that they didn't even have to use Starbirth to get off the Rapid Strike Mustard because of something like Shady Dealings, because of Ultra Ball and different cards that allow you to discard different options, get back different options, bring out those necessary pieces to be able to pull off these combos. So I think at first the Beedrill was just a meme by Andrew Mahone, sparking the, I just like knocking out Mew VMAX and let's just have fun doing it, but turning into a deck that is viable, a deck that is strategic and has a lot of different options as well. It's just been incredibly thrilling to see, in my opinion. I absolutely love cards like Beedrill.
Yeah, for sure. It keeps the format honest, having something that just like one shot or knocks out anything with special energies on it. It keeps all special energy decks in check a little bit.
I will say as well, there were plenty of special energy in the top 8 of this event. Oops, that was the wrong thing to move. I'm just moving this over real quick. In the top 8, there were, I think, 5 different Arceus decks in Indianapolis, and then the other 3 were Mew VMAX. Did you expect, Maxlow, don't lie to me here, did you expect that kind of top 8 for this event after we've seen, Rapid Strike Urshifu, Whimsicott, Whimsicott being the preventer of special energies? Did you expect a top 8 like this?
No, because I was very much anticipating Urshifu VMAX, and as I said earlier, I didn't. I saw one, and even the people I went with, not hardly any any of them saw Urshifu VMAX. So I think people came prepared for that, which that being like the heavy counter towards Mew and Arceus, if that's getting, pushed down by other things, then the two big decks, Arceus and Mew, would rise up. So if I had known that Urshifu was going to be the least popular of them, then maybe. But no, I don't think I would have expect Arceus and Mew in one time. I did honestly think Mew was going to win the event though this week before the tournament started. So
let's talk about Mew VMAX. Oh no, don't tell me I can't see this list because Facebook. Oh boy. But if you want to talk about Mew VMAX, let's see if there's another list I can pull up.
I saw that one. So whatever you pull up is that one had Andrew Estrada played 3 Pokemon catchers and 2 Psychic Energy.
Yeah, so a little bit different in terms of the deck that I'm going to showcase right now. Andrew Estrada, who got 3rd place at the event, he 2014 world champion, so a very, very renowned player, was playing a different list than what a lot of people are because, again, like you said, the Pokemon catchers relying on coin flips, and with not only Cram-O-Matic, but also the catchers as well. And not like he wasn't playing boss. You can just play lower counts of boss to be able to ensure, the supporter that you're using for that turn is Marnie, is Eliza. I still don't know how to pronounce it. It's been 10,000 years. But
it was year 1458, and her name was Eliza, and now it's Elisa. Anyway,
I'll never know how to pronounce it, but I will know that it's a pretty good card that people include in these lists. So we're going to go over to Dr. Joe Bro Top 8 in Indianapolis, part of the crew with the Pittsburgh Pokemon podcast. You may know them. Sean and I have both been a part of their podcast and group. Wonderful, wonderful people. But this is
I got to meet him. Shout out to the Pittsburgh Pokemon pod. I met him over the weekend.
Excellent crew. Also, they have a Jake on their pod as well. So
yeah,
the Jake's.
He's a Penguins fan. I got problems.
Anyways, this Mew VMAX list, kind of in a lot of senses, is similar, playing the correct switch art, I will say. So definitely Joseph Perez, a person that you can trust, I will say, with that base set switch art. I don't know if this is the X and Y reprint, but it's the same art pretty much. So doesn't matter. Kind of talk about this list a little bit. Is this really like something that we've seen differently? Is this, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of deck?
I think it's a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of deck. I played Mew VMAX as well. I went 5 and 4. So he didn't opt for much of the text like the one Marnie. He did play the Echoing Horn. But I think the one big difference between his list and like most lists is the fact that he opted for 3 Mew V instead of 4 Mew V. And he just replaced that with what looks to be just a consistency card, like the 4th Rotom Phone. I played 3 Rotom Phone because I played 4 Mew Vs, and I played 1 less switching out. But other than that, yeah, this is your cut and dry. I just want to play a consistent deck for the tournament and see if I can get top 8. And he opted for Mew, and obviously it paid off.
So, it is definitely. I mean, the 3 booster boxes, top 8. Man, I can't imagine winning.
He's got 6 Alt-Art Charizards in there. So you think he didn't get the money? No.
Yes, exactly. And the different parts of the list as well, your stadiums as well, 2 Rose Towers, 1 Training Court, playing 3 Eliza Sparkle and 3 Boss. Reminder again, this isn't like a catcher's list. I believe Andrew Estrada had 2 Boss in his list. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's what correct. Okay, so 2 Boss, and just a typical list. We've seen now the inclusion back with Oricorio, Oricorio, that support Pokemon. Is it 20 less damage or 30?
20.
So -20 with Oricorio's ability to fusion strike Pokemon. So that math coming into play again this time around, especially when you talk about the different little baby Galarian Moltres in Listen with all those dark counters. So excellent inclusion. You also have Echoing Horn to be able to bring up certain Pokemon potentially with a boss combo or just clutter up the bench as well with this list. And I mean, again, like we said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, Maxlow. But one of the things that you mentioned that I do want to stick on is the missingness, I guess you could say, the
lack
Urshifu, lack of Urshifu. You know, Urshifu the last couple of weeks, especially with the win over in Europe, Urshifu dominated for a long time in terms of a couple weeks, and we finally saw it really just drop off. And I think that's a combination of, like you were saying, people trying to counter it, but also just people being afraid of being countered. You know, it's done well for consecutive weekends, and so people are now like, okay, how do we take this thing down? But there was one Urshifu that did pretty well, and none other than one of the greatest players in the modern era and in Pokemon trading card game history, Tord Reckliffe over at Bilbao SPE, the special event that went on. We're switching tournaments now. Rapid Strike Urshifu, and of course with Rapid Strike Urshifu you have your dark counters as well, because, well, you have almost no way of beating Mew VMAX if you don't have dark counters in your Urshifu list. But also the inclusion of the Medicham V over here. We talked about the Medicham earlier in Ian Rob's list and the importance, and so a lot of those things can also be said once again in terms of the Medicham V. But this list, very, very interesting. There was the deck list error in terms of for Tord Reckliffe, so had to play the top 8 stuff without the Ultra Ball, which is kind of a big deal because Ultra Ball, especially when you talk about shady dealings, evolution Pokemon like Urshifu, or really just grabbing any Pokemon, it's kind of a big deal. But in terms of this list, very, very good list. Talk to me a little bit about the things that you like in this list, Maxlow.
One of the first thing I like about it is the fact that he kind of took what Gustavo Wada was playing with the Big Bird Moltres, and I think that's it. Like adding the Big Bird Moltres, I can't see if there's anything else. Maybe the second Sony. No, he played 2 Averys. Gustavo did. Adding the Big Bird Moltres to give a bigger presence of a backup attacker earlier in the game, as opposed to waiting out your opponent taking prizes for the baby Moltres to be a defector. He also had the Hoopa, and the Medicham, I think, is just nasty if you can get that off. I know it can be a little niche at times, like, oh, if I get exactly 20 damage counters on a Pokemon and knock it out, I get to take another turn. But it's very useful because you can set up some serious plays. And also, the last thing I want to mention is that 1 water energy, because Aqua Bullet is a nasty attack too on the shady dealings in Teleon, doing 120 to the active and 20 to the bench to set up more numbers. And plus, that's just another single prize attacker to do some damage I really like. And who's shocked that Tord got into the finals of a tournament, right?
Again, one of the best players in the world, and for a long time at that. But again, you know, talking about that Medicham, you know, once again, we see this Medicham paired up with a quick shooting Inteleon, a card that we talked about again in previous weeks had fallen off to shady dealings, but the 2 cards going hand in hand. And again, with that water energy, you know, doing just a little bit of spread, just putting your damage in different places to hit those big numbers, whether it's in terms of using those numbers for knockouts or setting up a yoga loop or, you know, G-Max Rapid Flow, another spread. Also, one of the only lists I feel like that play more copies of Sonya than any other supporter in the deck. So you see the 2 Sonias in this list. Sonia on the rise in terms of value in a lot of these different decks, whether that's grabbing, basic energy for your first turn attachment or grabbing Pokemon, whether that's your Sobbles, your Moltres, Urshifus, any of those cards that you need, and just playing a wide array of one-of supporters. We've seen so many different one-of supporters grow the last couple weeks since Robin. Wait, who won?
Robin Schultz.
Robin. I always get them mixed up, but Robin.
I don't blame you.
Robin having so many different one-ofs in his Urshifu list has been bleeding into everybody's list as well. Having a one-of Avery, Birdkeeper, Boss, Raihan, Cheryl, Peonia, Clara, and Cynthia's Ambition. Being able to get any of those back with Palpad to be able to use them effectively twice, but just having such a wide array and such a vast amount of different options as well. Because, I'm going to say it again, Shady Dealings, just an incredible engine that we have seen time and time again in this. And this is probably one of the only Urshifu lists that really did well in the event, but it's not the winning list. We don't actually have the winning list. I think the winning list is being saved for a YouTube video, but Alessandro, I'm going to botch his last name, Cremascoli? I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but you may know them on YouTube as iCaterpie. This is the content creator. iCaterpie ended up winning the Bilbao SPE with Whimsicott V-Star 11-0-6. So Whimsicott kind of slowing down the game as well. We've talked about in the past. This is an excellent example of that, having 6 ties in this event, but 11 wins and going undefeated really throughout the entire event. And, we've seen Whimsicott and how it's kind of built, but really interesting to see it jump up so far. And, Maxlow, if you could just talk about real quick the different strengths maybe that Whimsicott provides as a deck when you're talking about, the format right now.
I'm not gonna diss on my man iCaterpie, or Frank Persick for that matter. Their runs were incredible. iCaterpie winning and Frank getting second at EUIC. But I played 1 or 2 at Whimsicott at Indy. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2, but either way, I steamrolled it. And I looked at my friends and I was like, how are people doing anything with this? Like they had a single attachment per turn. I did see. I don't think it was Alessandro's list, so I don't want to say he put it in there. But if it's in his YouTube video, that's actually incredible. But I saw a Whimsicott list that did well at a tournament on Twitter, just scrolling, and it played one of the Celebration Zacians. Because I felt like the biggest weakness for Whimsicott is the fact that the list that Frank ran and that some people tried to not that one, the
Celebration. Oh yes, this one.
Yeah. The fact that in one, like on your first turn you just attach a single energy, you don't get to attack. You don't get to really do anything. And even if you go second and you attach a energy to do the fluff ball thing that prevents attacks from basic Pokemon, your opponent, if they're playing Mew VMAX, just runs through it with a Mew VMAX. And then once you lose that one energy on the board, it's really slow. But you do have to hit all your hammerheads and all the energy disruption and ability disruption it has playing Path to the Peak and stuff like that. Makes the deck not care about being slow, but I don't know. I don't know how they're doing it. I love Whimsicott, but I am a hater. I ain't gonna lie to you.
I do think that with Whimsicott lists, it's a little bit more difficult to pilot because again, you're slowing down the game. You have a lot more intense actions. I feel like personally with Whimsicott, more than other decks, you have sort of making wrong decisions, you get a lot more backlash in terms of those decisions. Like you have a lot more problems when you make the wrong choice or maybe not the correct line of play. But I do agree, the Zacian V from Celebrations, if you do not know, this Zacian V, the Psychic 220 HP Pokemon with the ability Roar of the Sword. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for a Psychic Energy card and attach it to one of your Pokemon. Then shuffle your deck. If you use this ability, your turn ends. I do agree that this card is a terrific inclusion, because whether it's your first, or when it is your first turn, I guess is what I should say, whether you're going first or second, you're probably not attacking, especially with the aggressive decks in the format like Whimsicott and things like, or I'm sorry, not Whimsicott, it's not aggressive. Mew VMAX, you know, you talk about how a Mew VMAX can just steamroll a Whimsicott at some points when they're not being prevented of using special energy. You're probably not going to have your Whimsicott V in the active at all, because it's going to die probably if it's there in the active. So having the ability to always on your first turn, almost always I should say, you do have to find it and put it in play, the Zacian V, but having that ability to basically guarantee, once you have the Zacian V in play, guarantee an energy attachment on that Whimsicott, which is so instrumental in the game, is huge for the deck and huge for the consistency as well. I believe Andrew Mahone, when he posted his list, had that in there, and Riley Holbert getting top.
That was the list I saw, yeah.
I believe Riley Holbert getting 12th overall in the event with the Whimsicott V-Star list, which we can look at real quick. Shout out to the Tag Team Podcast. Been a part of their podcast. Excellent podcast. But this is kind of probably what it looks like for the most part in terms of iCaterpie's list. You know, you were talking about the hammers in there, the 4 hammers, the 3 waves, fan of waves, and different cards like Path to the Peak as well. So I would say pretty standard Whimsicott list if you were to look at all the different Whimsicott lists in the format as of right now, but a good one if that, and the new inclusion of Zacian V just being so good. Don't play Whims without Zacian is the exact quote from Riley. But just a really, really good list. And honestly, I really thought Whimsicott would go down a lot. I feel like maybe not too many people played it. I mean, it definitely didn't have the drop off in player numbers or, you know, just success as Urshifu did this past weekend. But again, I think this deck is really hard to pilot. I think it has much more decisions that have much more backlash in terms of if you make the wrong line of play. But it's a good list, especially if your opponent doesn't have the absolute stones. Maybe they just have an average start. I do think you can get an advantage so long as you set up your Bibarels and things like that. But not necessarily a different top 8 over in Bilbao. I mean, aside from the Whimsicott, Rapid Strike, Urshifu, you do have the typical rest of the top 8 of Mew and Arceus decks in here. Malamar and Teleon, love my squids, getting 9th in this event, but
not a fan of that either.
Sean, let's talk about the most, or I said Sean, woof, man.
Hey.
Yeah, it looks like you're about to be replacing. Yeah, it looks like Sean better watch out and he better come back soon. But anyways, the most interesting list, in my opinion, to come out of this weekend was the winning list of the Joinville Regionals of Arceus, Lucario, V-Star. We talked about Lucario. I'm sorry if you have to turn your head sideways to look at this image, but Lucario V-Star now getting a regional win, very young in its introduction into the format. But kind of talk to me a little bit about this list, Maxlow. There's a lot to unpack here.
So with this list, I think it was Azul GG who started talking about like Arceus Bibero with the dark package. It didn't have the Lucarios in it, but like when you take the Lucarios out and just look at what Azul was I think, promoting on his YouTube channel and stuff like that. Or I think he even played some online tournaments. That's what the basis of this deck is. You get the Crobat VMAX that auto wins Malamar. We can talk later about that, Jake. You got the Hoopa V for the Urshifu tech, but really, I think, especially for the person who won the event, I didn't catch their name, but
Pedro Pertusi.
Pedro Pertusi.
Pertusi.
Right? Pertusi won the event. He really liked what Lucario V and V Star had to offer, because Lucario V's first attack for 2 colorless energies discards a special energy off of your opponent's active Pokemon. That's insane. Like, that's really good. Just to, if you're not getting any setup, you can disrupt your opponent a little bit. But the big attack doing 240 if your opponent's active Pokemon is a V, plus Choice Belt is nothing to sleep at. That's big damage at any point. And I want to ask him how many times he actually got the other V-Star attack off, as opposed to doing brilliant, what is it, Starbirth?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to just doing Starbirth. I want to know how many times he actually got opted to use that one first. But Lucario was Lucario V-Star is a card that we've talked about on our podcast, and just like in general, like, it's a good card. You can't build a single deck around it, but it's definitely splashable in something. And Pedro proved that that's correct, because he won, and now Lucario is finally getting some headlines.
I mean, looking at the format and looking at all these different event results that we've talked about, you know, Arceus has been running the table, right? Arceus,
absolutely,
a fighting weak Pokemon, if that. So, I mean, this was the time to shine for Lucario, and really, again, with the different options that you have in this list, the different flexibility that you can provide, adaptability to whatever matchup you're doing. You know, you have Arceus for a lot of like Arceus mirrors, things like that, you know, being able to play. You have the dark Pokemon as well, the counters to like Mew or any Pokemon that is weak to dark with your Crobat VMAX, like you mentioned earlier. Also, auto winning the Malamar matchup, that's kind of a pretty big deal, because I mean, you do want to win that matchup, although it's fallen off a little bit, so maybe you can start forgetting about it. I don't know. But
if you don't check it naturally, it'll always come back. We don't want Malamar to come back.
It helps
Am I right?
Hey, this is the only deck that I have built. But anyways, I mean, Crobat VMAX as well, the reason why it's also really cool that it counters Malamar is because Crobat VMAX one-shots a Mew VMAX. So naturally, you have the Crobat VMAX to take out Mew, and then as a result of that, you know, you're like, oh yeah, I'm taking out Malamar as well, which always helps. And the inclusion of Hoopa V as well. We've seen Hoopa V in a couple lists. We haven't really mentioned what it is for anyone who doesn't know what the Fusion Strike Hoopa V is. It has an ability to hit for fighting and dark weakness. Or wait, what is it? No, it hits as like
psychic weakness. It's a psychic type and a dark type.
That's what it is. So being both a dark and a psychic type in terms of its attacks, it does excellent coverage in terms of checking Urshifu VMAX, does an excellent job of checking Mew VMAX, and any of those Pokemon that have a weakness to psychic or dark. And is it grass weakness that Hoopa V is weak to?
It totes a grass weakness, so that Beedrill was probably checking all of them.
But I mean, anyways, in the Beedrills that we've seen a lot in terms of in this past weekend, a lot of the Beedrills were included in Arceus decks, right? Yeah. Something that you probably won't use too much with Hoopa V. So Hoopa V being an excellent Pokemon to be able to provide, because if you're facing, let's say, a Arceus Beedrill deck, Isaiah Bradner's going up against this deck, Pedro's probably not using Hoopa. Pedro's probably using...
not at all.
Pedro's using, Arceus and Lucario. So again, having that flexibility, having that adaptability as well to whatever situation, construct a game plan about this. And especially with across this weekend, across all of the different decks that we've seen, whether that's Arceus lists, Urshifu, things like that, we're seeing 3 different energy lines in all of these lists. You know, we've seen double turbo, dark fighting, double turbo, water fighting, you know, all of these grass even as well. Like, we've seen so many different options, and it's so cool to see that, because it's felt like a long time. When was the last time we had decks that had just so many different energies in a list? I'm trying to think if, while I've been playing since like August 2019, if there's been a deck like that. I think the last one was like Tina Chomp.
Tina Chomp and Ultra Necrozma Malamar was the last, because it had Steel and Psychic.
Yeah, and those are just 2 different types.
And a little gem for all you old souls listening to the pod. Way back when Sun and Moon came out, there was a deck called Solgaleo GX and Lurantis GX that had grass and steel type energy.
And those are just 2 different lines of energy. So seeing 3 of them is just awesome, in my opinion, to see in this format. Again, the different flexibility. And this Arceus list specifically running the Barrel engine. You know, a lot of times we've seen just the Shady Dealings engine with the Inteleons, but now we're getting to see the Beavers. I mean, listeners of the pod will know that I love the Beavers and how the Beaver has been included in lists as of late. Absolutely love it, but really, really cool in my opinion. Again, Lucario V and V Star were promos in collection boxes that came out very recently. So if you want your Lucarios to add to your list, very, very cool card. Definitely, you could either go buy the boxes if you want to open some packs and things like that along the way, or you could just buy them as promos, which are not that expensive, because the promos in those boxes usually aren't that expensive. But looking at the rest of the top 8 in terms of this event, you have some Mew VMAXs in here. As always, you have some Arceus V-Star different archetypes, a couple different ones. You see the Beedrill in here. You see an Ice Rider Calyrex, which is an interesting comeback. But you see in here also a couple different Sylveon.
Don't click on it. It don't work.
It doesn't work?
No.
Oh, well, I will say, thank you for pointing that out. I will say that my friend Kyle as well, shout out to my buddy Kyle, also piloted an Arceus V-Star kind of Sylveon list. And it's kind of, as you could say, like a counterbox list. I don't have the exact 60. I should have freaking asked him to send it to me. Dang. But it's basically a counterbox deck, you know, similar to like the Lucario V-Star Hoopa V. You just have a lot of different options of Pokemon that will attack for weakness, you know, of different opponents in this format, whether it's dark weakness, fighting weakness, you know, Sylveon hitting for that psychic as well, or just using Arceus for the different options of the format. As of right now, Gustavo Watto getting 15th, jumping off the Urshifu, I will say. So that is very interesting. You know, we talk about the fall of Urshifu in this weekend, this extravaganza, and not even the winner of last week. Or was it last week or the week before?
I think it was the week before.
Either way, the last winner, you know, not piloting
last
the archetype.
Big winner.
Yeah.
Didn't even want to play Urshifu, so you know it's hot garbage. I'm just kidding. It's a really good deck. It's just very difficult.
And again, you know, we've talked about this many times on the Metapod podcast, and you'll hear this for any, you know, podcast, whether that's Tag Team, Pittsburgh, Maxlow's pod, you know, all of the different Pokemon podcasts. You know, metas evolve, metas shift, you know, decks become really good, and then the next weekend they're not so good because of different counters, people playing different decks to strategize against you, and how different decks are tweaked to tech against you and things like that. But what's kind of the biggest takeaway, in your opinion, overall in terms of the competitive meta this weekend, Maxlow?
Expect the unexpected, for sure. And if you're going to a big tournament like Indy or Sao Paulo, or not Sao Paulo, Bilbao, a special event, or Joinville, don't hammer and focus in on one specific archetype. Like, don't be like, oh, I need to tech versus Urshifu, because there is a high chance that you're not going to even see it until like day 2 if you make it to day 2. So that's my biggest takeaway. I was initially game planning for Urshifu leading up to Indy, and I didn't see but one. So I'm glad I pulled back the reins on that one. But,
yeah, I mean, preparing for events, you have to be ready for a lot. You have to be aware of the meta, knowing that, Arceus V-Star is a very, very popular card. You're probably going to see it a lot. You could see it a lot. Different dark counter box decks, maybe Beedrill if you had the foresight of seeing all the awesome Beedrill lists.
Beedrill's nasty.
It's just incredible to see. I love the ability of single strike Mustard to just be able to throw down a Beedrill whenever you want. That was thrilling. That got my blood pumping. But anyways,
and then I had one more take.
Yeah, go for it.
As far as the meta goes, it seems to me that the meta, like, decks are evolving, like, as far as text and stuff like that, but I think the meta has finally, like, it formulated and centralized into the fact that the 3 best decks are Mew VMAX, Arceus, insert something, and Urshifu, for sure. Even though Urshifu didn't have a good showing, that doesn't mean it's still not a top threat in the meta. Just because a good pilot can do it. And as you can see, a lot of top players opted not to play it, which is another reason why I think it didn't do so hot. But that's my takeaways, the meta and the tournaments itself. Top 3 decks are still Arceus. I think Arceus might be on top this time, but Arceus, Mew, and Urshifu.
I would 100% agree with you in that statement. A lot of people will listen to this podcast, look at the results and say, oh, Urshifu, maybe not a tier 1 deck anymore. It's tier 2 or tier 2.5 or 3 or whatever you want to do in your tier lists or whatever. But I would agree, and I think a lot of other top players will agree that Urshifu is still a good deck. It just wasn't its weekend. It's how the meta evolves, how these IRL events happen, and we'd like to thank you for joining us on this pod. Maxlow, big thank you to you for joining me kind of last second. Is
you hit me up on my, like, I was mid-drive. I was booking it to Indianapolis Regionals, and you're like, what are you doing Monday? I don't know, sleeping.
Are you gonna be back to join me on this? But Maxlow, where can people find you? Because you make content as well, excellent content. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Max MAX FlowTKast, FlowTKast. That's my Twitter handle. I'm on YouTube as FlowTKast, FlowTKast, and that's the same as the pod. Twitch streams, I'm not sure on the Twitch and stuff like that just yet, because I am going to Jersey Regionals next week. So you can find me in Jersey next Friday. But yeah,
quick, what's the play for Jersey? Leak it.
When in doubt, play Mew.
I think anybody will tell you this. Just play whatever you're most comfortable with. That's probably what you're going to do best with, is whatever deck you are most comfortable with and things like that. 100%. But thank you so much for listening to the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. Leave a review whether you like us or hate us. Rate the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and leave a nice YouTube comment as well. Reminder, we're going to be opening Astral Radiance here on the YouTube channel. Exclusive Astral Radiance content early before it's released. Sean was blessed to get Astral Radiance product, and we're going to open it here on this podcast. I'm going to be opening it too. I don't know when that will go up because I'm leaving for Houston, but soon. Anyways, have a great rest of the day. Thank you again, Maxlow.